It's very exciting when you hear from an agent or a manager that they would like to meet with you. That's really exciting. And I know with showcases coming up in the spring, a lot of actors might get interests from those representatives who might want to work with you and your talent. That's very exciting. But what? Hold on just a second. Do you know what takes place in those meetings? Do you know the questions that you should think about asking when you meet with an agent or a manager? I've got 10 thoughtful questions actors should ask agents or managers during a first meeting. All coming up right now on Casting Actors Cast.
This is Casting Actors Cast. Jeffrey Dreisbach brings you insights and inspiration. Make a difference in your acting and your acting career. Here's Jeffrey Dreisbach.
Well, hello and welcome to today's episode of Casting Actors Cast. I'm Jeffrey Dreisbach with McCorkle Casting in New York. How are you? Hope you're having a good day. I'm having a good day. And listen, I think these 10 questions might be really useful for you. That's why I put them together. But here's what I don't want you to do. Please don't just write these questions down and then just simply ask those questions. The idea here is that I'm going to give you some ideas about the kinds of questions that are really useful to ask. And so you need to do that in your own words, in your own voice. You know what I'm saying? So be very, very careful not to just simply ask these questions. And I'm also going to point out those questions that might be a little delicate to ask. So I'm going to make sure that that happens. But nevertheless, these questions are questions which are really, really important for your relationship to start off on the right foot. But first, this is that moment of the podcast where I get to say thank you for tuning in to the podcast. I'm not going to go through all kinds of the promotional stuff that I usually do. I'm trying to shorten that part of the podcast up. All I can say is please check out Casting Actors Cast, all one word, .com for lots of information, promotional stuff going on, appearances that I'm making at colleges and universities, a book and blah, blah. I mean, there's just a ton of stuff. So do yourself a favor, fill out that form that says dive into the talent pool for freebies. Let's jump into the subject, shall we? So I think the first question is, again, sort of a general question, but understand the value. Question number one, what is your approach to representing actors? Simple, right? The approach to representing actors varies from agency to agency. Each agent or manager has a very specific way they like to work. And by asking that question, it'll help you understand their style. It'll also help you understand their priorities as they represent you and your talent. So getting a sense about how they like to work is the very kind of first in question that I think really deserves you to get a good, solid answer. After all, with an agent, it's like a marriage. It's really a relationship that is based on trust. And also, you want to get all the information you can from that agent or manager in terms of how they work so that there are no questions when future issues come up. Question number two. Now, this is a delicate question, right? I told you that at the very top of this. When you ask this question, be careful because some might perceive this as a question that has no significance. Here's the question. When you ask, how many clients do you currently have? Some would argue that this question is a good question to ask because it gives you insight into how much attention they might be able to devote to you. But here's the problem with that question. First of all, it's really not helpful for you to know, because if they were to respond to you, oh, I have 125 clients that I like to work with that are signed with this office, that's the information. Well, is that a lot? Is that a little? You see, the thing is, you're not really sure. You don't really know if that's a big number or a little number. So you're making assumptions based on limited information. That's why knowing how they work will give you more and better insight, I believe. So be careful about asking how many clients they have, because I think it might be potentially offensive to that agent. Because they may come back to you and say, well, why would you like to know that? Why is that information for you to know? Be prepared with an answer if you have one. But I just wanted to point that out, that a lot of actors think that that's a great question to ask, and then they find themselves slightly embarrassed because having that information really does nothing for you. Let's move on from there. I think it's a great question. Here it is. What types of roles or projects do you typically submit your clients for? So the types of roles are really important information. If they come back to you with a very specific strategy that they would like to work with you on, then that might be a really helpful and useful answer. But it ensures their vision aligns with your goals and interests. After all, it's not going to be a great relationship if you are only interested in doing theater and they say, I do primarily film and television. You may think, well, I'd like to do film and television, but if your interest is in just doing theater, that must be something you discuss right away. On the other hand, if you're genuinely open to all kinds of opportunities that might be available, and you feel comfortable and confident and ready to go out on some auditions for film and television and theater, then by all means, that might be the perfect relationship for you to start with this agent or manager. Number 4, do you focus on specific markets or industries? Like, is it specifically film, or is it specifically television, or specifically theater, or perhaps maybe it's just you like doing commercials more than anything else? In other words, similar to the last question, they might have a particular skill set that they enjoy doing themselves. Does that coincide with what your interest is? See, that clarifies whether they align with what your aspirations are for your career. Again, an agent relationship, a manager relationship is that. It is a marriage. And so it really must feel satisfying and compatible with what your interests are. Question number 5. This is kind of a generalized question, but if you ask it in your own voice, you would be really well respected, I think, when asking this question, which is, what is your communication style and how often can I expect to hear from you? You see, once you know the method by which they like staying in contact with you, and they live up to that, then you have to be nothing but completely satisfied as long as you understand that that's the way it works. For example, you might have an agent that says, if you don't hear from me in 3 weeks, give me a call or send me an email. Or, if it's a particularly busy time, I just might be calling you with audition appointments and basic information, and I might not be able to have a long, involved discussion. Some actors really want their agent or manager to give a lot of personalized attention when an agent or manager might not be that communicative with you on a personal level. So that is oftentimes a scale which shifts, and it shifts also over time. If you're with that agent or manager over a longer period of time, then I'm sure that relationship will feel a little more personalized. But in the beginning, it might not. So asking what communication style they prefer, or how often should they expect to hear from you, or you from them, then that becomes a foundational understanding about that particular relationship. And I think that's really helpful because it establishes the expectations for your working relationship. Simple as that. All right, moving on from there, how do you collaborate with clients to shape their careers? How do you collaborate? So it really would give you some insight, I think, into how proactive they are in career planning and career development. Some agents are, and I mean no disrespect whatsoever, and I'm talking about agents and managers, by the way. Some They just really they trust their clients. They trust their professionalism. They call out appointments. They send you the script. They send you the sides. They give you the date. They give you the time. They expect you to confirm that appointment, and then they move on. And that might be all that you get. Now, if that's the way they work and you have that understanding, that's great. Some are very proactive in career planning. Some agents and managers take their time in terms of being very, very selective with the kinds of roles that they have in mind for you. And again, communication. As long as you know that that's the strategy that's taking place, you're going to be in a really great place because you understand what that relationship is all about, and that proactive nature coming from that agent or lack thereof is something that will not be frustrating for you because that's exactly what they told you is their method of working. Now, here's another question. Again, I would not ask this as a direct question. I would ask this as I would phrase it in a way that kind of just makes sense and doesn't sound, it is a business relationship, by the way, but I don't want it to sound too formal because, that delicate balance between your awareness about what's happening in the industry and demonstrating that you are in the world of the industry is really valuable. On the other hand, you don't want to come across as standoffish. You just want to be your best self. But here's the question. You do with it as you will. What casting directors, production companies, or studios do you have strong relationships with? I mean, of course, you understand that this reveals their network and their industry connections, and that's really important. If they say and give you a list of people that they really have worked with, or perhaps they put their clients in the last 3 or 4 productions of this theater, or, whatever the situation is, then you're going to get that answer. You're going to be pretty satisfied, I would think. On the other hand, if there's some bobbing and weaving, if there's some hedging on that a little bit, it might be a little suspect. It might be something that you have to take into consideration more seriously if they don't really have a solid answer to the question. Here's another thing that I've seen happen quite frequently, so be prepared for this. Sometimes those agents or managers are going to ask you, what casting directors do you have a relationship with? Who do you know in the industry that knows your work? Be prepared for an answer, because if they know that you have inroads into a particular casting person or production office, or maybe some of your relationships are industry connected, then that might be really good information for them, because they know that they can push you in that direction should the right opportunity come along. So it's a two-way street. So just be prepared. If you've had workshops or classes with casting directors, with other agents perhaps, or producers, that's going to be really useful information to be able to share at that first meeting. We're going to pick it up right after this.
Are you wishing for acting success? Are you ready with audition techniques for theater, film, and television? Are you ready with proven methods for growing your talent? Are you ready to boost your business? It would help if you had a playbook to guide you. Now, there's Jeff's Jots, the Actor's Career Playbook by Jeffrey Dreisbach. Jeff's Jots at Amazon.com, CastingActorsCast.com, available in paperback, hardcover, or ebook. Stop wishing and start doing with Jeff's Jots, the Actor's Career Playbook.
All right, welcome back. We're talking about the 10 questions that are really valuable for you to ask agents or managers on a first meeting. We're at question number 8 now. Do you provide guidance on headshots, reels, or other promotional materials like websites, like my IMDb page, like my Actors Access? If they are very much hands-on in terms of how they like to work with their clients, then the answer is going to be unequivocally, yes, I work with actors in all of those areas. Now, there are some who've already seen your headshot. They've already checked out your reels. Maybe they've investigated you on Google, whatever. They have some information about you already. Maybe they feel it's not necessary to provide that kind of guidance. Maybe they would say to you, no, I love your materials as you have them right now. Let's see what that does for us. That could happen. Oftentimes, agents love to have a little bit more input on your headshot. They feel that there's a quality in your headshot, current headshot, that maybe needs some changes or would benefit from another photographer or, whatever it might be. Or even reels. If you have a reel that's too long or it's not a professional reel, it's a show reel and not a demo reel. All of those things might be an area in which those agents or managers give you insight on. Now, some might be hands-off and some might be extremely active. Your tolerance is something that you have to evaluate. Your tolerance level. How willing are you to make some of these changes? Is it difficult for you to do that right now? Again, it's all about communication. It's all about being really upfront about who you are and where you are in the industry and at what level you are in the industry, because everybody has to start from somewhere, right? So there's no reason at all to feel apologetic or to feel embarrassed if you don't have a reel. That's the weirdest thing is I think actors are so anxious because they think they have to have all of this material perfectly done. And the reality is, if you're starting out, or if you're just coming back to the business after a period of absence, please don't stress out on the materials that you have. The agent just simply wants to get an idea about where you are and where you are willing to make some adjustments, make some changes, or add to the materials that you already have. Because it shows whether they're going to support you in refining your branding. And it's your brand that is the initial attraction that agent had for you. So now the agent wants to be able to work with that by making suggestions or not and helping your brand get out into the marketplace. That's the reason why that question becomes really valuable and really important. Question number 9, another delicate question, but still bears getting a real decent answer for, which is, what are your expectations of me as a client? Now, it's absolutely true that this is a very challenging time, particularly right now. There are a lot of agents that are moving clients around. Some agents are leaving. Some agents are combining with other agencies. Some managers aren't seeing any new people. Some managers want a bunch of new people. So there's all kinds of different varieties and flavors, if you will, that are happening and taking place. And so if you don't ask this question, then you might have a rude awakening when a little time goes by and suddenly they're calling you and saying, I'm not sure we should be working together any longer. Now, that could come as a complete surprise, but if you know what their expectations are for you as a client, that is not meant, by the way, to cause any more anxiety about your career as an actor. If they have expectations of, I just want to get good feedback when I send you out on auditions, cool, great. That's a useful thing. Agents with new clients will call our office all the time and ask about their new client. So be prepared for that. And that's an expectation that is sort of built in to the cake. It's baked into the cake already. So just be aware of that. Sometimes agencies have a time where they really have expectations for you to get some callbacks going on, maybe even some bookings happening. So those expectations, it's really valuable for you to know because it helps you understand their requirements. They have standards for working together. They don't have the time necessarily to teach you anything. There's an expectation already that you know what you're doing professionally. And so they might have their standards, but you also have your own. And so coming to an agreement in terms of how much time, what are the expectations in terms of getting callbacks, getting material. This is, going into film auditioning is a relatively new experience for me, as long as you're aware of that. The agent or manager will say, I'm completely aware of that, but I trust that you know what to do in an audition. Those are the kinds of questions, and that's the kind of discussion I believe should be happening when you meet with that agent or manager. And then finally, question number 10. Are you ready? I think it's important to ask this. How do you handle conflicts or disagreements with clients? Good question, right? Now, again, I'm not sure I would ask that question that directly, but I think there's a lot of value in conflict resolution that takes place, not only with the agent's clients, and of course there are going to be conflicts. There'll be conflicts. Boy, there's so many to talk about. One is that the actor doesn't tell the rep that they're going out of town for 3 weeks for a wedding in Jamaica in July. And, so it's really challenging. And that agent or manager is going to get really, a little bit pissy, I think, because they weren't given that information. And then there they are trying to get you appointments for jobs. And you never mentioned that you were going to be out of town or away. So being communicative about your conflicts when you're not going to be around. But more importantly, there are also all kinds of relationship issues when it comes to you booking the job. And maybe there is a calendar conflict that you have. How does that agent or manager solve that? Maybe there's a conflict in terms of negotiating. Negotiating your contract has oftentimes between casting and the agent, the manager, there are oftentimes all kinds of disagreements about that. The money, the hotel expenses, the flights, the there's all kinds of stuff that need to be worked out in a negotiation. The style of that agent or manager's skill set when negotiating can be important information for you. Now, I'm of the belief, and I really do believe this, that actors do not necessarily have to have somebody as a rep that they just love, that they like, that they think is just the best, and it's a great relationship, and that's perfect. I love the idea of that. That would be sort of an idealized version of an agent-actor relationship. But sometimes a really strong business person is needed, like what I call a gorilla in the garage, somebody that can really fight for you when there is an issue, somebody who has the clout, has the background, has the intelligence to really sell you on your behalf to casting directors, producers, production companies. So you don't have to necessarily be in love with the person that you're working with. As long as there is an understanding, as long as there's communication, and as long as there's a good business relationship, you're going to find that to be probably more useful to you in your career. And so when there are disagreements, the value of knowing how they like to work is really helping you gauge how they manage challenges professionally. Sometimes agents, like any other service, like casting directors, they develop reputations on how they are to work with. And sometimes that can be really good and valuable information for you to know. Sometimes if you hear that somebody's just really, really tough or really, really mean, and that doesn't jibe with your own sensibilities, then by all means, that might not be a good partnership. But understand this. These 10 questions I just gave you will allow you to evaluate the agent or the manager's professionalism, compatibility with your goals and your ability to support your career. That's the most important thing. Listen, I hope you found this helpful. This was my pleasure to bring it to you, and I look forward to having you check me out again on the next episode of Casting Actors Cast. Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining Casting Actors Cast. Please don't forget to review, like, and share Casting Actors Cast wherever you get your podcast videos. Thanks. I'm Megan Grace Martinez.